The scream that never left her throat shattered every glass window in the auction house, sending crystalline shards raining down upon the stunned crowd like fallen stars. And in that impossible silence that followed, a voice darker than midnight itself whispered directly into her mind. "I've been waiting 300 years to hear that sound." Wait, before the next revelation happens. If this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To make sure you don't miss any unexpected alliances or awakened powers, subscribe and join our circle. The game is about to change. Now, back to the scene. The girl on the platform didn't move, couldn't move. Her wrists were bound with iron chains that had rubbed her skin raw, and her bare feet were numb against the cold wooden stage. Around her neck hung a placard with a single word scrawled in careless ink: mute. She was 17 years old, though she looked younger. Hunger had a way of stealing years from a person's appearance. Her hair, once perhaps a rich chestnut, hung in matted tangles around a face smudged with dirt and despair. Her dress, if it could be called that, was little more than burlap stitched together with twine. But her eyes were the color of storm clouds before lightning strikes, gray and churning with everything she could never say. The auction house was located in the decrepit heart of Ashford, a city that had long ago forgotten the meaning of mercy. It was a place where the poor were sold to settle debts, where orphans were traded like livestock, where the unwanted were disposed of with ruthless efficiency. The building itself was a monument to human cruelty. Wooden beams stained with decades of suffering, walls that absorbed screams like sponges, and a stage where countless souls had been bartered away. Tonight's crowd was smaller than usual. A handful of merchants looking for cheap labor, a brothel owner scanning for fresh faces, a farmer needing field hands he wouldn't have to pay. They were the dregs of society, and they knew it, which made them all the more vicious in their judgments. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced, his voice nasal and bored. He was a thin man with a face like a weasel and fingers that constantly twitched as if counting invisible coins. Female, approximately 17 years. Defective, cannot speak. No known family, no skills. Starting bid, 2 coppers. Silence. The girl, whose name was Ilara, though no one had bothered to ask, stared straight ahead. She'd learned long ago that showing emotion only made things worse. Tears earned mockery. Fear earned cruelty. So she'd become stone, or tried to, even as her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird. 2 coppers, the auctioneer repeated, irritation creeping into his tone. Come now, gentlemen. She's young enough to train, strong enough for labor. She's broken, someone called from the back. Laughter rippled through the room. 1 copper then, the auctioneer snapped. 1 copper and she's yours. More silence. Ilana felt something inside her begin to crack. She'd always known she was worthless. Her own father had told her so before he'd sold her to settle his gambling debts. But having it confirmed in such stark public terms was a different kind of death. The auctioneer's face reddened. Fine. Whoever wants her can take her. Just get her off my stage. That's when the doors at the back of the auction house exploded inward. Not opened, exploded. The heavy oak doors, reinforced with iron bands, didn't swing on their hinges. They simply burst apart as if struck by an invisible battering ram, sending splinters flying across the room. The crowd ducked and screamed, hands flying up to protect faces from the wooden shrapnel. Through the settling dust walked a figure that didn't belong in a place like this, didn't belong in any place that touched sunlight or knew warmth. He was tall, impossibly so, with shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. His coat was black, tailored to perfection, and moved around him like living shadow. His hair was dark as a raven's wing, pulled back from a face that was beautiful in the way that sharp knives are beautiful, all elegant edges and lethal angles. His skin was pale, not the pallor of sickness, but of something that had never needed the sun. But it was his eyes that stopped hearts. They were red, not brown with a reddish tint, not hazel in certain lights, red. The color of fresh spilled blood, of rubies held up to candlelight, of warning signs that mortals were wise to heed. The crowd recognized what he was immediately. How could they not? Stories of vampires were whispered in every corner of Ashford. Tales of immortal predators who walked among humans wearing human faces, who could tear a man apart with their bare hands, who could compel obedience with nothing but a glance. But not just any vampire had entered the auction house. This was Lucien Draven, the alpha vampire of the Northern Territories, the one whose name mothers use to frighten disobedient children, the monster that other monsters feared. Did I hear correctly? His voice was silk over steel, cultured and cold. You were about to give her away? The auctioneer's mouth worked soundlessly. His face had gone the color of curdled milk. Lucien moved forward with a predator's grace, his boots making no sound on the wooden floor. The crowd parted before him like water before a ship's bow. No one dared meet his eyes. No one dared breathe too loudly. He stopped at the base of the stage and looked up at Elara. For the first time in 10 years, 10 years since the fever had stolen her voice and left her in silent isolation, Elara felt seen, truly seen, not as a burden or a defect or a thing to be disposed of, but as a person. His red eyes swept over her, taking in every detail, and something flickered in their depths. Recognition? Impossible. She'd never seen him before. She would have remembered. How much? Lucien asked, not looking away from Elara. My lord, the auctioneer stammered. She's yours. No charge. Please, take her with our... I asked how much. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Frost began to form on the windows. Two gold coins, the auctioneer blurted. It was a fortune, 100 times what any slave had ever sold for in this wretched place. Lucien reached into his coat and withdrew a leather purse. He tossed it to the stage where it landed with a heavy thunk. There are 50 gold coins in there. Consider it payment for wasting my time. He held up one hand toward Elara. The chains around her wrists didn't unlock. They simply disintegrated, crumbling to rust and dust in an instant. The iron collar around her neck did the same. Come, he said quietly. Elara hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to be anywhere but here. He was a vampire, a predator. He would drain her dry, or worse. And yet, something in his eyes told her that staying in this place, being claimed by one of these human monsters, would be a fate far worse than anything he might do to her. She took a step forward, then another. Her legs trembled with exhaustion and fear, but she made it to the edge of the stage. Lucien was there instantly, moving faster than her eyes could track, and he lifted her down as if she weighed nothing at all. His hands were cold, not unpleasantly so, but strange, the chill of marble on a winter morning. You will not run, he said, and it wasn't a command or a threat. It was a simple statement of fact. Elara nodded, because there was nothing else to do. He turned to leave, keeping one hand at the small of her back to guide her. The crowd pressed themselves against the walls, desperate to give him space. The auctioneer had collapsed to his knees, still clutching the purse of gold coins as if afraid it might vanish. They were almost to the broken doors when a voice called out, "Wait!" It was the brothel owner, a corpulent woman with hard eyes and a harder heart. "My lord, forgive me, but the law says that all purchases must be registered with the magistrate. Otherwise, you could be accused of theft." Lucien stopped. Slowly, he turned his head to look at the woman. "Are you suggesting I am a thief?" "No, my lord, of course not. I only meant the law." The law. Lucien's voice was soft now, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Tell me, does the law prevent you from operating a brothel that enslaves children? Does the law stop this auction house from selling human beings? Or does the law simply look the other way when coin changes hands?" The woman went silent. "That's what I thought." Lucien's eyes swept across the entire crowd. "Let me make something abundantly clear to all of you. This girl is under my protection now. If anyone at all tries to claim her, tries to hurt her, or even speaks her name in a way I don't like, I will return here. And when I do, I won't be so merciful as to simply break your doors." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Then Lucien and Alara were outside, into the cold night air that tasted of freedom and fear in equal measure. A carriage waited at the curb, black as sin, and drawn by horses that were too still, too perfect to be entirely natural. The door opened by itself. "Get in," Lucien said. Alara climbed inside, her mind reeling. The interior was luxurious beyond anything she'd ever seen. Velvet seats, silk curtains, silver fixtures that gleamed in the lamplight. She sank into the cushions and tried not to think about what came next. Lucien entered after her, taking the seat across from her. The door closed with a decisive click, and the carriage began to move, though no driver had been given instructions. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Ilara's hands moved before she could stop them, signing in the language she'd created for herself over the years. A futile gesture. No one ever understood her signs. No one ever tried. "Why did you buy me?" To her utter shock, Lucien responded immediately, his hands moving in the exact same sign language. "Because 300 years ago, I made a promise to someone I loved. I promised that if I ever heard the silent scream of a psychic awakening, I would find that person and protect them." Ilara's eyes went wide. Her hands trembled as she signed, "What do you mean, psychic awakening? What silent scream?" "The windows didn't break because of the wind," Lucien signed. "They broke because you screamed with your mind. You're a psychic, Ilara, and a powerful one at that." How did he know her name? She'd never told anyone in that place. But more importantly, a psychic? That was impossible. Psychics were the stuff of legends, people born with the ability to move objects with their thoughts, to read minds, to speak without words. "I don't have powers," she signed desperately. "I'm nobody. I'm broken." "You're not broken." Lucien's signs were firm, brooking no argument. "You're dormant, and tonight, in that moment of absolute despair, your power finally woke up. Every vampire within 10 miles felt it, a psychic scream so powerful it could have shattered bones." Ilara shook her head. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of trick, some elaborate cruelty. Lucien leaned forward, his red eyes intense but not unkind. "Think, Ilara, haven't you always felt different? Haven't you always known that your silence wasn't just about losing your voice, that there was something else, something deeper, locked away inside you?" And God help her, she had. She'd always felt like she was pressing against an invisible wall, like there were words and sounds and power trapped just beneath her skin, screaming to get out. She'd thought it was madness, the last fragmenting pieces of a broken mind. "I don't understand," she signed. "Why would you protect me? What do you want from me?" Lucian sat back, his expression unreadable. "What I want is complicated. What you need to know right now is this: you are safe with me. I will not hurt you, I will not feed on you, and I will teach you to control your powers before they destroy you." Before they destroy me? Untrained psychics are dangerous to themselves and everyone around them. Your emotions will trigger your abilities. Fear, anger, joy, sorrow, all of it will manifest in unpredictable ways until you learn control. Without proper training, you could level a building without meaning to. The carriage rattled over cobblestones, carrying them away from the only city Elara had ever known. She should have been terrified. She should have been plotting escape. Instead, she found herself asking, "Who did you promise? 300 years ago?" A shadow crossed Lucian's face. Her name was Seraphina. She was my wife. And like you, she was a psychic who couldn't speak. Was? She died. The pain in those simple signs was immense, an ocean of grief condensed into 2 hand movements. She died because I didn't understand her powers in time, because I couldn't protect her from those who feared what she could do. "I'm sorry," Elara signed, and meant it. "Don't be sorry. Just trust me. I failed her, but I won't fail you." The carriage continued into the night, leaving behind the auction house, the city, and the only life Elara had ever known. Ahead lay a vampire's mansion, a world of blood and immortality and ancient secrets. Ahead lay training, danger, and powers she couldn't begin to comprehend. But most importantly, ahead lay possibility. For the first time in 10 years, Elara felt something unfurl in her chest. Not quite hope, she wasn't ready for that yet, but perhaps its younger cousin, curiosity. "Where are we going?" she signed. Lucian's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile if it had reached his eyes. "Home," he signed. "To Ravenwood Manor. Your new home, if you'll have it." Elara looked out the window at the passing darkness. She had no belongings, no family, no friends. She had nothing but the burlap dress on her back and a power she didn't understand. By all rights, she should refuse, should demand to be let go at the next village. But where would she go? Back to the auction house? To another master who would treat her as less than human? At least with Lucian she had, what? A chance? An opportunity? A vampire who signed in her language and spoke of protection. "All right," she signed finally. "I'll come with you, but I have conditions." Lucian raised one elegant eyebrow. "You're in no position to negotiate." "Then you should have left me on that stage." Elara met his red eyes with her gray ones, and for the first time in years, she felt a spark of her old spirit. "If I'm as powerful as you say, you need me as much as I need you." To her surprise, Lucian threw back his head and laughed. It was a rich sound, warm despite coming from something cold and undead. "You're right. Very well. State your conditions. First, you will never drink my blood without permission. Second, you will teach me everything about my powers, holding nothing back. Third, if I ever want to leave, you will let me go." Lucian considered her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand, palm up. "First condition? Agreed. Second condition? Agreed. Third condition? Well, we'll revisit when you understand what you are and what hunts people like you. But I promise, I will never be your jailer. You will always have a choice." It wasn't a perfect agreement, but it was better than she'd expected. Elara placed her hand in his. His skin was cold, but his grip was firm. "We have a deal," she signed with her free hand. "We have a deal. Lucian confirmed. The carriage rolled on through the night, carrying them toward a future neither could fully predict. In the distance, thunder rumbled, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The storm was coming, both literally and metaphorically. But for the first time in a decade, the Lara wasn't facing it alone. Ravenwood Manor rose from the darkness like a creature of nightmare, all Gothic spires and dark stone that seemed to absorb what little moonlight broke through the clouds. It sat atop a hill surrounded by ancient forest, isolated from the nearest village by miles of winding road. Gargoyles perched on the corners of the roof, their stone eyes seeming to follow the carriage as it approached. Windows glowed with pale amber light, suggesting life within those ancient walls. The carriage stopped before massive double doors, carved with intricate patterns, wolves and ravens, and symbols that hurt to look at too directly. Before Ilara could reach for the handle, her door opened by itself. Lucian exited first, then offered her his hand. She took it and stepped down onto gravel that crunched beneath her bare feet. The ground was cold, but not as cold as she'd expected. In fact, the air around the manor felt strangely temperate despite the season. Protected by magic, Lucian signed, noticing her confusion. The manor exists partially outside normal space. Inside, you'll find it's always a comfortable temperature. The doors swung open before they reached them, revealing an entrance hall that belonged in a palace. The floor was polished black marble, shot through with veins of silver. A chandelier of crystal and wrought iron hung from the vaulted ceiling, its candles burning with flames that were slightly too blue to be natural. Paintings lined the walls, portraits of people in clothing from different eras, all watching with knowing eyes. But it was the woman descending the grand staircase who captured Ilara's attention. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, with skin like porcelain and hair the color of moonlight. She wore a gown of deep burgundy that looked like it cost more than the entire auction house. Her eyes were amber, bright and sharp as a hawk's. "So," she said, her voice carrying a lilting accent Ilara couldn't place, "this is the psychic that made every window in the East Wing explode?" She looked Ilara up and down with an expression that was more curious than cruel. "She doesn't look like much." "This is Isolde," Lucian signed to Ilara while speaking aloud, "my second in command and the closest thing I have to family. Isolde, this is Ilara. She'll be staying with us indefinitely." Isolde's eyebrows rose. "Staying? Lucian, darling, we talked about this. Bringing home strays is—" "Not a stray, a student." Lucian's voice held a note of warning. Isolde's expression softened slightly. She descended the rest of the stairs and circled Ilara, studying her from all angles. Ilara forced herself to stand still, to not flinch, even though every instinct told her to run from this predator. "She can't speak?" Isolde asked. "She doesn't need to," Lucian replied. "She's psychic. Once she learns to control her abilities, she'll be able to communicate telepathically. If she survives the training." Isolde stopped in front of Ilara, her amber eyes boring into gray. "Training a wild psychic is dangerous, Lucian. You remember what happened with the last one." "The last one wasn't protected properly. I've learned since then." "Have you?" Isolde's voice was gentle but pointed. "Or are you trying to resurrect the past?" Lucian's jaw tightened. "This has nothing to do with Seraphina." "Doesn't it?" Isolde glanced at Ilara again. "Silent girl with psychic powers appears at an auction, and you just happen to buy her? You see the parallel, surely." "I'm standing right here," Ilara signed sharply, though she knew Isolde couldn't understand. The gesture must have conveyed something, though, Because Isolde smiled, a quick, genuine smile. She has spirit. Good, she'll need it. Isolde turned to Lucien. Fine, I'll prepare the East Wing rooms. But Lucien, if this goes badly, it won't. Famous last words. Isolde swept back up the stairs, her gown trailing behind her like spilled wine. Lucien turned to Ilara. I apologize for Isolde. She's protective. She's right to question you, Ilara signed. This could be about your dead wife. It's not. But his signs were too quick, too defensive. Liar, Ilara signed. Lucien stared at her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he signed, perhaps partially, but that doesn't make my promise to protect you any less real. At least he was honest. Ilara could work with honest. A door at the end of the hall opened, and a young man emerged. He looked barely 20, with curly dark hair and eyes that shifted between green and gold. Unlike Lucien and Isolde, he wore simple clothes, a linen shirt and dark trousers. He also moved differently, less predator and more prey. Master Lucien, he said, then stopped short when he saw Ilara. Oh, I didn't realize we had a guest. This is Finn, Lucien signed while speaking. He's human, like you. He manages the household and assists with research. Finn, this is Ilara. She'll be staying with us. Finn's face lit up. Really? Finally, someone else who needs to sleep and eat. Do you know how boring it is being the only human in a house full of vampires? He bounded forward and offered Ilara his hand. Welcome to Ravenwood. Don't worry, it's much less terrifying than it looks. Mostly. Ilara hesitated, then shook his hand. His grip was warm, alive, in a way that Lucien's and Isolde's weren't. She found herself relaxing slightly. Finn seemed to notice her discomfort. Can you speak? When she shook her head, he frowned. Sign language? She nodded eagerly. I don't know much, but I can learn. I'm good with languages. In the meantime, he pulled a small leather-bound notebook and a pencil from his pocket. Would this help? Ilara took the notebook with trembling hands. Paper and pencil, such simple things, but in that moment they felt like treasure. She wrote quickly, "Thank you. Why are you here? Are you a prisoner?" Finn laughed. Prisoner? No, I came here by choice. My family disowned me for my interests, and Lucien offered me sanctuary and access to the most extensive occult library in the Northern Territories. I study ancient languages and magical texts. It's fascinating work. You're not afraid of them? Sometimes, Finn admitted, but fear and respect aren't mutually exclusive. Lucien has never heard me. None of them have. They're actually better family than my blood relatives ever were. He glanced at Lucien. Should I prepare a room in the East Wing? Isolde is handling it, but Ilara will need clothes, food, and basic supplies. Can you manage that tonight? Of course. Finn turned back to Ilara. Any preferences? Foods you like or hate? Colors you prefer? Ilara wrote, anything is fine. I'm not picky. Everyone's picky about something, Finn said with a grin, but we'll figure it out. Come on, I'll show you to your room. You look like you're about to collapse. He wasn't wrong. Now that the adrenaline was fading, exhaustion crashed over Ilara like a wave. Her legs felt like water, and black spots danced at the edges of her vision. Lucien stepped forward. Allow me. Before Ilara could protest, he swept her up into his arms as if she weighed nothing. Finn, lead the way. Being carried by a vampire should have been terrifying. His body was cold, hard as marble, and she could hear no heartbeat in his chest because there was no heartbeat to hear. But despite all that, Ilara felt safe, which made no sense at all. Finn led them up the grand staircase, down a corridor lined with more portraits and ancient weapons, and finally to a door at the end of the East Wing. He pushed it open to reveal a bedroom that was larger than the entire shack Ilara had shared with her father and brothers. The bed was enormous, draped with curtains of midnight blue velvet. The floor was covered in soft rugs that her abused feet would thank her for. A fireplace dominated one wall, already burning with those strange blue-tinged flames. Bookshelves lined another wall, though most were empty. A writing desk sat near a window that looked out over the dark forest. Lucian set Ilara down gently on the bed. The mattress was soft beyond belief, and the pillows felt like clouds. "The washroom is through that door," Finn said, pointing. "Fresh water is in the basin, and there are towels in the cabinet. I'll bring food shortly. Nothing too heavy, since your stomach probably can't handle much after whatever you've been through." "Thank you," Ilara wrote, showing him the notebook. "You're welcome. Oh, and don't worry about locked doors or anything sinister. You're free to explore the manor, though I'd avoid the west wing at night. That's where the other vampires in Lucian's coven sleep, and they're not all as friendly as him." Finn paused. "Actually, scratch that. Lucian's not that friendly. But he's honorable, which is more important." "Finn," Lucian said warningly. "What? I'm being honest." Finn winked at Ilara. "I'll be back soon with food." He left, closing the door behind him. Lucian remained, standing near the fireplace, his red eyes reflecting the blue flames. "You should rest," he signed. "Tomorrow, your training begins. It won't be easy." "I never expected easy," Ilara signed. She hesitated, then added, "What happened to your wife, Serafina?" Lucian was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then slowly, he signed, "She was hunted by an organization called the Crimson Order. They believe psychics are abominations, threats to the natural order. They found her before she learned to defend herself." By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. "And they're still out there, hunting people like me?" "Yes, which is why you must learn quickly. You shattered windows tonight with raw emotion. Imagine what you could do once you have control." "I could protect myself," Ilara signed. "You could do more than that. You could change the world." Lucian moved toward the door. "Sleep, Ilara. Tomorrow, everything changes." He left, and Ilara was alone for the first time since the auction house. She sat on the edge of the bed, her mind reeling with everything that had happened. This morning, she'd been a slave waiting to be sold. Tonight, she was a psychic in a vampire's manor, apparently harboring powers that could change the world. It was too much, too fast. But as Ilara finally lay back on the soft bed, feeling clean sheets against her skin for the first time in months, she realized something important. She was warm, she was safe, and tomorrow would be the first day of her new life. Whatever that life held, it had to be better than what she'd left behind. She closed her eyes and, against all odds, slept. Ilara woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the smell of fresh bread. For a moment, she thought she was still dreaming. In her old life, bread had been a luxury reserved for special occasions, and sunlight through a window had been something she'd only seen in the houses of the wealthy. Then memory crashed back. The auction house, Lucian, vampires, psychic powers. She sat up slowly, her body aching in new and interesting ways. A tray sat on the table beside her bed, loaded with food, bread and butter, fruit, cheese, and a pot of tea that was still steaming. Beside the tray was a pile of neatly folded clothes and a note written in elegant script. "Good morning. Please eat and dress. Training begins in 1 hour. Meet me in the courtyard. L." Ilara ate quickly, savoring every bite. The bread was warm and soft, the fruit was sweet, and the cheese was rich in a way that made her want to cry. How long had it been since she'd had a real meal? Months? Years? The clothes were simple but well made. A shirt of soft white cotton, dark trousers that actually fit, sturdy leather boots, and a jacket of deep green wool. No corsets, no impractical skirts. Clothing designed for movement. She washed in the basin, scrubbing away layers of grime and auction house stench. The water was warm, another impossible luxury, and there was soap that smelled of lavender. By the time she finished, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. The girl staring back at her had clean skin and clear eyes. Her hair, once freed from its mats and properly washed, fell in waves to her shoulders. She looked human, like someone worth something. Finding the courtyard proved easier than expected. The manor seemed to guide her, halls leading naturally in the direction she needed to go. She wondered if that was more of the magic Lucien had mentioned. The courtyard was a space of gray stone and green moss, open to the sky but surrounded on all sides by the manor's walls. Ancient trees grew in large planters, their leaves rustling despite the lack of wind. In the center of the space stood Lucien, dressed in simpler clothes than last night, just black trousers and a loose white shirt. Isolde was with him, along with two other vampires Ilara hadn't met. One was a tall man with bronze skin and silver hair, his eyes the color of molten gold. The other was a woman who looked barely older than Ilara, with red hair and eyes the color of emeralds. "This is Adrian and Cassandra," Lucien signed, as Ilara approached. "They're part of my coven and will assist with your training." Adrian inclined his head in a gesture of respect. Cassandra just stared, her expression unreadable. "Are we certain this is wise?" Cassandra asked, her voice sharp.
Training a psychic in the heart of our home? If she loses control. She won't, Lucien said firmly. You can't know that. I can and do. Ilara has already demonstrated remarkable control. She shattered windows but hurt no one. That shows instinctive restraint. Lucien turned to Ilara. Are you ready? Ilara nodded, though her stomach churned with nervousness. Good. First lesson, understanding what you are. You are a psychic, which means your mind can affect the physical world. But more specifically, you're what's called a resonant. Your emotions resonate outward, creating effects in your environment. Like the windows, Ilara signed. Exactly. Your despair resonated so powerfully that it manifested as kinetic force. But emotions aren't the only trigger. Intention matters too. Lucien gestured to a small stone on the ground. Pick it up without touching it. Ilara stared at the stone. How was she supposed to do that? She didn't know anything about psychic powers or... Don't overthink, Lucien signed. Feel. Want it to move. Intend for it to move. Let that intention flow from your mind. Ilara focused on the stone. She wanted it to rise, needed it to rise. She imagined it lifting, floating, coming to her hand. The stone exploded. Not lifted, not floated, exploded into dust and fragments that scattered across the courtyard. Too much force, Adrian observed calmly. Ilara's hands moved frantically. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Don't apologize, Lucien signed. You just proved you have power. Now we teach you control. He gestured, and another stone appeared in the same spot. Try again. This time, gentle. Imagine you're cradling something precious. Ilara took a breath and tried again. She pictured the stone as an egg, something fragile that needed a soft touch. She reached out with her mind, carefully, gently. The stone wobbled. Just the tiniest movement, barely visible, but it moved. There, Lucien said with satisfaction. That's the beginning. Again. They worked for hours. Stone after stone, Ilara practiced moving objects with her mind. Most exploded or refused to budge. But slowly, incrementally, she began to understand the feel of her power. Like a muscle she'd never known she had, one that grew stronger with use. By midday, she managed to lift a stone 3 inches off the ground before exhaustion made her drop it. Enough, Lucien declared. You'll hurt yourself if you push too hard too fast. Finn will have lunch ready. Ilara slumped against a tree,
her head pounding. Using her powers felt like thinking really hard for hours without rest. Her temples throbbed, and lights danced at the edges of her vision. "Why does it hurt so much?" she sighed. "Because you're using a part of your brain that's been dormant your entire life," Lucian explained. "It's like trying to run a marathon when you've never walked more than a few steps. The pain will lessen as you grow stronger." Cassandra, who had been watching from the shadows, stepped forward. "She's surprisingly strong for an untrained resonant. Most can't even wobble a pebble on their first day." "Serafina moved a cup on her first attempt," Isolde said quietly. The courtyard went silent. Even the trees seemed to stop rustling. Lucian's expression hardened. "Serafina is not relevant to this discussion." "Isn't she?" Isolde pressed. "You're training this girl the same way you trained her. You're using the same courtyard, the same exercises. You've even given her rooms in the same wing." "Isolde, I'm not saying it's wrong, Lucian. I'm saying you need to acknowledge what you're doing. This girl deserves honesty, not to be a replacement for your dead wife." "I'm not a replacement," Ilara signed sharply, even though she knew only Lucian could understand. Lucian translated, and Isolde's expression softened. "Good. Remember that. And make sure he remembers it too." She turned and left the courtyard, her movements sharp with suppressed anger. Adrian cleared his throat. "I'll go ensure lunch is prepared." He followed Isolde, leaving just Lucian, Cassandra, and Ilara. Cassandra studied Ilara with those unsettling green eyes. "Tell me something, girl. Why are you doing this? You could have run last night. Could have demanded Lucian take you to a village and let you go. Why stay?" Ilara pulled out her notebook and wrote quickly, showing it to Cassandra. "Where would I go? I have no family, no money, no voice. At least here I have a chance to become something more than a slave." "Practical," Cassandra acknowledged, "but also dangerous. You realize what you're becoming, don't you? A weapon. Lucian may speak of protection and training, but psychics like you have always been used by those in power. Vampires, witches, human kingdoms, everyone wants a psychic under their control. Lucian said I'm free to leave whenever I want." Cassandra laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "And you believe her, sweet child? No one with power like yours is ever truly free. The moment you revealed what you are, you painted a target on your back. Then I'll learn to defend myself." "Now that," Cassandra said with approval, "is the right answer." She glanced at Lucian. "I like her. She has survival instinct. Very well, I'll assist with her training. But, Lucian, when the Crimson Order comes, and they will come, you'd better be ready to protect her properly this time." Cassandra left, and Ilara was alone with Lucian. The vampire stood motionless, staring at the spot where Isolde had been. "Is it true?" Ilara signed. "Am I just a replacement for Serafina?" Lucian turned to her, and for the first time she saw genuine vulnerability in his expression. "I don't know," he admitted. "When I heard your scream last night, when I saw you on that stage, yes, I thought of her. I thought of how I failed her, and I swore I wouldn't fail again." "But I'm not her." "No, you're not." Lucian moved closer, kneeling so they were at eye level. "You're fiercer than she was, more stubborn. She wanted to hide from the world, but you want to conquer it." "I don't want to conquer anything. I just want to be free." "Same thing sometimes." Lucian stood. "Come, you need to eat, and then we have afternoon lessons." "More moving stones?" "No, something harder. I'm going to teach you to shield your mind." Lunch was a chaotic affair. Finn had prepared a feast, and he insisted Ilara try everything. There was roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, bread with honey, and a berry tart that tasted like heaven. Finn chattered throughout the meal, asking questions faster than Alara could write answers. Where are you from? How long were you at the auction house? Do you have any hobbies? Have you ever read fantasy novels? Do you like music? Alara wrote her answers patiently. She was from Ashford, born and raised. She'd been at the auction house for 3 weeks before Lucian bought her. As for hobbies, she'd never had time for hobbies. Survival had taken all her energy. Well, you have time now, Finn said cheerfully. The library is on the 2nd floor, west corridor. It's huge, and Lucian won't mind if you borrow anything. There's also a music room, though I'm terrible at every instrument I've tried. Oh, and the garden is beautiful in the spring, though it's a bit dreary this time of year. Why are you so kind to me? Alara wrote. Finn's expression became serious. Because I know what it's like to be thrown away. My family called me an abomination for studying magic. They said I was trafficking with demons. In reality, I just wanted to understand the world beyond what I could see and touch. He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. Lucian gave me a home when no one else would. I figure the least I can do is make others feel welcome too. Alara reached across the table and squeezed his hand.
All right, he said, clearing his throat. Enough sentimentality. Eat your tart before it gets cold. Well, colder. It's supposed to be cold, but you know what I mean. After lunch, Lucian led Alara to a different part of the manor, a tower room at the very top of the north wing. The space was circular, with windows on all sides offering views of the forest. The floor was carved with intricate symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. This is a sanctuary room, Lucian signed. It's protected by ancient magic. Nothing can enter without permission, and all psychic energy is amplified here. Why bring me here? Because you need to learn to shield your mind before someone tries to break into it. Alara's eyes widened. Someone could read my thoughts? Other psychics can, yes. So can certain vampires, witches, and demons. Your mind is like a house with no locks on the doors. Anyone with the right skills can walk in and take whatever they want. Memories, secrets, fears, all of it is vulnerable. The thought made Alara's skin crawl. The idea that someone could violate her mind, see her private thoughts, was worse than any physical threat. How do I stop them? You build walls, mental barriers that keep intruders out. Lucian sat cross-legged on the floor and gestured for her to do the same. Close your eyes. Imagine your mind as a physical space. What does it look like? Alara closed her eyes and tried to visualize her mind. At first, she saw nothing but darkness. Then, slowly, an image formed. A small room with stone walls and a single window. It was the cell she'd been kept in at the auction house. Her eyes flew open and she shook her head violently. What's wrong? Lucian signed. I don't want that to be my mind. I don't want to be a prisoner anymore. Understanding crossed Lucian's face. Then change it. Your mind is yours to shape. What do you want it to be? Alara closed her eyes again. This time, she didn't just observe, she created. The stone walls crumbled and reformed as smooth marble. The small window expanded into a wall of glass overlooking a vast ocean. The ceiling lifted until it was a dome painted with stars. And in the center of this space, she placed a throne of silver and sapphire. When she opened her eyes, Lucian was smiling. What did you build? She wrote in her notebook, a palace, my palace, and no one enters without my permission. Perfect. That's your mental sanctuary. Now, every time you feel someone probing at your thoughts, you imagine yourself sitting on that throne in that palace. You imagine doors slamming shut, walls rising, guards standing at attention. You make your mind a fortress. How will I know if someone's trying to read my mind? It feels like a pressure against your thoughts, like someone standing too close, invading your personal space, but inside your head. Lucian's expression became serious. I'm going to try to read your surface thoughts. Don't fight me, just observe what it feels like. Are you ready?
Ilara nodded, though her heart raced. She felt it immediately, a cold presence brushing against her consciousness. Not painful, but deeply uncomfortable, like invisible fingers rifling through her memories. "Now push me out," Lucian signed. "Go to your palace, shut the doors." Ilara imagined her sanctuary, saw herself on the throne, powerful and in control. She imagined massive doors slamming shut, locks clicking into place, walls rising higher and higher. The cold presence retreated, vanished. Ilara opened her eyes, gasping. Her head throbbed, but there was also a sense of triumph. "Good," Lucian signed. "You learned quickly. We'll practice this every day until it becomes second nature. But for now, rest. You've done enough." They descended from the tower as the sun began to set. The manor took on a different character in the evening. Shadows grew longer, sounds became sharper, and Ilara could feel the other vampires beginning to stir in the west wing. "Do they drink human blood?" she signed to Lucian. "Some do, but never from unwilling victims. We have arrangements with blood banks and willing donors. I haven't hunted a human in over a century." "Why not?" Lucian paused at a window overlooking the forest. "Because I remember what it's like to be human, to feel fear and pain and helplessness. I won't inflict that on others, no matter how much my nature demands it." "That must be difficult." "It is, but some things are worth the difficulty." He turned to face her. "Speaking of which, I should warn you, tomorrow night we're having guests." Ilara's hands moved in a question. "Other vampires, leaders from the southern territories. They've heard rumors of a psychic at Ravenwood and want to verify the truth. Some will be friendly. Others will see me as a threat," Ilara finished. "Yes, or as an opportunity. You must be careful what you reveal. Trust no one but those in this household." "Not even you?" Lucian's expression was unreadable. "Especially not me. I have my own agenda, Ilara. You're wise to remember that." With that unsettling statement, he left her at her bedroom door. Ilara entered her room and collapsed onto the bed. Her head ached, her body was exhausted, and her mind was reeling from everything she'd learned. But beneath the exhaustion was something else: excitement. For the first time in her life, she had power, real power. Not just the ability to move stones or shield her mind, but the power to choose her own path. She fell asleep with her hand outstretched, focusing on a small book on the desk across the room. In her dreams, the book flew to her hand, and she caught it with ease. When she woke the next morning, the book was on her bed, pages ruffled as if it had been thrown. Ilara smiled. The following day passed in a blur of training and preparation. Lucian taught her more about mental shields and introduced her to basic telekinesis exercises. Finn helped her select appropriate clothing for the evening's gathering, a dress of midnight blue with silver embroidery that made her feel like someone important. Isolde, surprisingly, offered advice on dealing with vampire politics. "Never show fear," Isolde said as she helped Ilara with her hair. "Vampires can smell fear like sharks smell blood. Even if you're terrified, keep your face neutral. And never, ever let them know the full extent of your powers." "Why not?" "Because power attracts predators. If they think you're weak, they'll try to acquire you. But if they know how strong you truly are, they'll try to kill you before you become a threat." "What should I tell them?" "That you're learning, that you're grateful for Lucian's protection, that you're no threat to anyone." Isolde met Ilara's eyes in the mirror. "Basically, lie through your teeth." "You don't like me much, do you?" Isolde's hand stilled in Ilara's hair. "It's not that I dislike you. It's that I'm afraid for what your presence will do to Lucian. He's been stable for the past century, focused on building his territory, maintaining peace, being a good leader. But you make him remember things he's tried to forget, pain he's tried to bury. I'm not trying to hurt him. I know, but sometimes we hurt people without trying. I sold finished with Ilara's hair, pinning it up in an elegant style that exposed her neck. There, you look like you belong in a vampire's court. Now remember, tonight you're not Ilara the slave or Ilara the victim. You're Ilara the psychic, student of Lucian Draven, and you will not be intimidated. I'll try. Don't try. Do. The guests began arriving as darkness fell. Ilara watched from a second-floor window as carriages pulled up to the manor, each one disgorging elegantly dressed vampires.
Some looked almost human. Others made no attempt to hide their predatory nature. There were at least 20 of them, maybe more, all powerful, all dangerous. Finn appeared at her door, dressed in formal attire. Ready? Ilara shook her head.